Farmer Luke here, and hopefully in this next series of videos I'm going to teach you about these things. Combines, with a little help from the star of the show, Farmer Clive. So sit back, relax, and hopefully we'll learn something along the way. Hi everyone, back again. Now we're at the front of the combine, which is called the header. Now the main purpose of the header is to cut the crop. Now how does it do that? Well, let's have a look. We're here at the header then, where the crop gets cut. So there's three main parts to a header. We have the knife section, the auger, and the reel. So as the combine's going along, the knives go backwards and forwards really fast and very sharp as well. And that cuts the crop. So as the combine comes along, the knives cut the crop, and then the reel goes round and helps the crop in to fall against the auger. And then the auger travels the crop up to the centre of the combine, where it's then took through the combine using a series of rakes. When it goes up the chains from the header is under this acceleration bar, as it's called. The crop goes underneath it and goes into the drum. So let's see how the drum works. Just seen it goes under an acceleration bar into the drum. Now this is split into two parts, being the drum, which is here, and the concave. Now, to explain more about this technical bit, here's Farmer Clive.
Now the drum and the concave, the crop, whichever you're cutting, goes through it and it's actually squeezed together because there's not much gap. But obviously different crops are different settings, so we can raise or lower the concave depending on what crop we're cutting. And what happens, there's very small bars and there's gaps in them where when the corn or whatever you're cutting is threshed, as we call it, drops through the bars, and if you notice there's a bit more gap here, and the straw and some of the grain, what's probably still in it, carries on up, and then it goes to what we call two rotors, which we'll see later, but they do another bit of extra threshing of the crop. But this is travelling at nearly up to 1,000 revolutions a minute. We can slow it down or speed it up, and we can adjust the gap between the concave and the drum.
So let's follow the straw into the rotors. The next journey of the straw that comes out of the drum goes to the rotors, and on this combine we have two of them. And inside them is a long cylinder, and what happens is the straw gets wound up the rotors using these and gets pushed against the side, which then forces any grain that's still left in the straw out to fall on the sieves. The straw then gets wound out here and then falls to the floor, where it is then either baled, or if we don't want the straw, goes through the chopper. We decide not to keep the straw, it comes through here, which is called the straw chopper. And what basically that does is, you can see there's knives at the back there. They rotate really fast and chop the straw up into tiny little bits, and then it gets spread out by these big drums across the width of the combine. So we've seen the concave at the front. The next stage of the grain that falls through the concave ends up here, which we call the sieves. And these are split into two, a top sieve and a bottom sieve. And I'm going to pass you over for more technical knowledge from the driver of the combine, Farmer Clive.
And obviously the corn what's come through, or the grain what's fell through the concave, it's still got bits of straw and whatever in it, and obviously chaff. So what happens, underneath the combine there's a real big fan which blows a lot of air, and what happens, obviously the corn or the grain being a little bit heavier sort of sinks, and all the straw and the chaff is get blown up in the air. So what we want is all the clean grain to fall through the sieves. Obviously we could adjust the sieves, different gap openings for what different crops, or what if we got a bit flowing over the back which we don't need, we don't really want, we don't want to put the corn back on the ground. And what happens, the top sieve does the majority of the cleaning. The lower sieves is what we call the ones where not quite fresh grain should fall through and get put back into the drum to be refreshed. And obviously if you see a combine working, there always seems to be a lot of dust at the back of the combine, most times because the fan is blowing all the chaff and the bits of straw out the back. So that's where most of the dust you'll see is mostly just the rubbish out the grain that we do not need.
And it ends up on these things, which then spreads it about. So it's easier to work in later on when we try to plant the next crop. So we've seen how it's separated, but how does the grain go from either the drum or the sieves into the tank? I'd like to welcome back Farmer Clive to tell us more.
Right, so this big long box here, it's got paddles in it. They're on a chain and they've got a rubber flap, and it travels round and round and round. And what happens, the corn what's passed through the sieves, what they call the clean grain, ends up in an auger which runs the width of the combine, and it's augered into this side where the paddles pick it up. And if you see this box here, the moisture of the grain is being taken here, and I could be able to tell in the cab what the moisture is, and it ends up going right up and to get into the tank, which you'll see inside the tank later. Now while there's two sieves, as we mentioned, a top sieve as we call it, and a bottom sieve, anything that's not been fresh properly travels over the bottom sieve into what we call the returns auger. And this is similar to the main grain auger. There's an auger underneath, and the rows of paddles takes the corn all the way up here and across another auger back into the drum. So it goes through the drum and the concave again to give it another.
You can see all the fresh grain in the tank, whereas it's stored until it's filled right up, and then the trailer will come alongside, will empty in the trailer and then take back to the farm, as you'll see in the next clip. So we're up here in the tank. As we just found out, how the grain gets up here, it goes up this what we call a bubble auger, and then falls down into the tank where it gets stored until it's full, and the trailer driver comes and takes it away. And as we can see, the cross augers, which when we come to empty the tank, takes the grain out, and then alongside the emptying auger, which at the minute's in the stored position, which comes out to fill the trailer, as we'll see in this next clip. That is how one of these works. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you ever so much for watching. Look out for other videos on harvesting. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.